Broadcasting from the studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. It's the Ken Calvert Show with your host, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, and welcome to the Ken Calvert Show from the studios of WKEN, where every day is the weekend, or as Arthur P. used to say, it's the weekend. Used to do that every Friday at 5 o'clock, a lot longer than what I just did. And he would just blow out his vocal cords. Don't know how he did it, but he got it rocking and stomping every Friday night at 5 o'clock. Riff Radio, the poobah, the grand poobah of rock and roll. I digress, friends. I was reading today that Steve Miller and Peter Frampton are starting their tour tonight, touring together. Tonight in, I think it's Kelowna, BC, Canada. Steve Miller and Peter Frampton. They will be in our area on June 17th at DTE, formerly known as Pine Knob, of course. Now, 40 years ago, that pairing, those two together, 40 years ago here in the city of Detroit, you would have had to buy a ticket to see that pairing at Ford Field. Those were two monsters. Now, touring together at DTE, Steve Miller has sold over 60 million albums. Peter Frampton has arguably got the most successful live album ever, Frampton Comes Alive. Both artists, by the way, are very, very friendly guys, and I caught up with both of them separately, I guess about 6 years ago, and I put the two together for you. So today's podcast features Steve Miller along with Peter Frampton, so I'm going to get out of the way, and I hope you enjoy it. Here is, we'll start with, let's go with Steve Miller, please. And Calvert, 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. Steve, did I do it correctly?
You did it perfectly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Calling from Idaho, and Steve and I were just talking about this. I've never been there, but you tell me it's a beautiful place to visit.
Yep, it's a lot of mountains. I live up in a high mountain desert area. I'm at about 6,500 feet right now.
How did you pick Idaho, Steve Miller?
Well, I was living in Seattle, and, 1 year the sun didn't shine from October till June, and I went, I gotta move.
Do you have a studio in your house? I bet you do.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's gotten so easy with computers now, with Pro Tools and Cool Edit and all the others, that you can put a 24-track right on the screen. Do you use it that often?
Yeah, I play with it all the time, and it's, in the living room, on the piano, next to the guitar. And I really enjoy it. I've been a studio nut all my life, and the latest and greatest technology is just so golly gee whiz. I love all of it. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. Even at the radio level, somebody was calling me earlier, and I said, we now use what they call audio vaults. And they went, what happened to CDs? I said, listen, man, in 1965... we were spinning 45s, and we went to 33s, then we went to CDs, and now it's all digital. It's changing, but it's getting easier, believe it or not. Is that good for today's young musicians? Yeah, absolutely, because they can experience so much more, so much quicker than we could. Just think about it. When I was a kid, you'd go to the music store, you'd get an album, you'd take it, you had to pull it out, you had to do all this stuff. Now, on my hard drive, I've got, 5,000 songs on my laptop or something. So if I want to just listen to a little Detroit MC5, I can just turn it on. Yeah. Or some Bob Seger, too. Bob may be listening, so we always got to get Bob's name out. Hi, Bob. How are you, man? I haven't seen you in a long time. When are you going to get your big, fat old butt back out here on the road? We miss you, bro. Well, listen, don't start my phones ringing, because that happens every time, but we do miss Bob being out on the road. Here's my question for you, going back to that computer question, and you think about, how is it then that when I play something from Steve Miller going back to 1973, it still sounds like something made yesterday? Well, we've worked really long and hard on recording, and that was always one of the parts that fascinated me was, getting things to sound good on records. And I loved studio work. When I was a little kid, Les Paul was a really good friend of my father's. In fact, my father was the best man at Les Paul and Mary Ford's wedding. Wow. And Les Paul was like inventing multi-track recording when I was little, and I used to go see him play at the nightclub, and he used to come over to the house all the time, and my dad had a tape recorder, so I was just like, tape recorders, multi-track, multi-tracking, multi-vocal, speed it up, slow it down, man. And I started doing that when I was about 5 years old, and I'm still doing it now, and I'm 60.
Well, you know what? You talk about Les Paul, and you talk about, he basically invented the electric guitar.
Right.
And I remember him telling me a story once that he took the arm off of his record player and said, if I were to take this needle and strum my strings on the guitar, I could get a little sound to come through that speaker.
Right.
And I'll never forget, I said, well, wait a minute, man. Did it work? He said, oh, yeah, it worked.
When he was a kid, he used to illegally broadcast. He ran an illegal AM radio station, too. So he was like this little, electronic genius walking around trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. And then he also happened to be a pretty good guitar player.
Well, yeah, as it turns out, they've named a couple of guitars after him, I think.
Doggone it, didn't they, though? And so as a kid, like I was 5 years old, and I went, oh, electric guitars, tape recorders. I get it. That's what I want to do.
Steve Miller's my guest. When you were playing the Masonic, you were one of the first bands to actually initiate what I thought was sort of rear projection. You had 3 screens, and you had all the different seasons going on in the background. It was very cool.
Oh, I know exactly what tour you saw. You saw the first Fly Like an Eagle
Yes,
tour.
I did.
With the slideshow.
Yes. Yeah. They do it a little differently now.
That was real high tech. That guy was from Disney.
Wow.
That was the Disney slideshow.
Will you go through an entire collection of what we'll call the greatest hits?
No, I'm doing country music.
Perfect.
Now.
That's what I was hoping for. And some spoken word. Can we just do some
spoken word? I'll be reading things I believe in.
Okay.
Actually, our set right now is chock full of all the greatest hits. Of course, we always do those. And we're doing some Junior Wells and Buddy Guy, some Otis Rush, some early stuff. Living in the USA, I think, will be in there. Let me see. Let me think.
Set list.
Freddie King.
It's on.
A lot of different stuff.
Look at the bass drum. It's somewhere on the set list on the bass drum. That's where they usually keep it, right?
Right. Hey, it's great to talk to you, Ken. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys soon.
Just walk me through it very quickly. 2 things. Number 1, your favorite all-time Steve Miller song, and number 2, what were you thinking when you wrote it?
God, let's see. I guess I'd have to say The Joker, and I was at a party outside, sitting on the roof of the hood of a Mercury, leaning against the windshield, looking up at the sky, going, I feel great.
All right, final question. I always have one final. There's no such word as pompatus, correct?
Incorrect.
There is a word based on you. You invented the word then.
You just used it, didn't you?
Yes, I did, but it's not in the dictionary, is it? Steve, I can't wait to see you.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it too. We love to play in the Detroit area, and we'll be seeing you guys in a minute.
Well, we just had a great time chatting, you and I, Pally. Stay right there for a second if you don't mind, Steve.
Yes. Hi, Peter Frampton, Ken.
How are you, Peter?
I'm good.
It's great to talk to you again. How's life?
Treating me rather well. I'm enjoying 2 weeks off after 2 years, so that's not bad.
Is that right? No kidding. It's been...
It's the only 2 weeks I don't have to prepare anything well. Now you're saying that I got to start rehearsing soon.
No, I'm not. Peter, I'm not saying anything of the kind. Of course, I admire your work ethic. You're living in Cincinnati or in Nashville?
I have moved back to Nashville. So yes, I'm here now, in my little music room, and yes, I'm enjoying being back.
I hear so many people talking about Nashville. If you want to deliver a great product and find some great players, that's the place to be.
I've just got a lot of friends here, and the beauty of it is that it seems like everyone comes through, everyone goes through London at some point, New York, L.A., and Nashville are the music sort of hubs, so it's cool to be here, as well as you can't find in a square mile any more great players than Nashville.
We had a guy from Seeger's band in, Jim Moose Brown, who plays keyboards and guitar. He was a session player for the longest time in Nashville, and he just said you would just go from gig to gig to gig to gig, and there are so many gifted players. I just wonder if the pond is now starting to get a little overstocked.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
No, it's just great to be among. It's a community of musicians and writers, and everything else. I mean, there's film here as well, so it's a very creative area.
Peter, recently, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and in fact, it was in Nashville. Didn't you sit in with the Black Crowes and do a couple of tunes?
A lot of fun. It was a dream realized. I've always as soon as I heard those guys come on the radio for the first time, I went. Yeah, it was just a breath of fresh air.
It really was.
There were no synthesizers or drum machines or anything on it, and at that time it was sort of grungeville as well. It all sort of happened at once, and everyone went back to 3 guitars, drums, and a singer for a while again.
Yeah,
and it was that was a great time.
What did you do with the band?
We did 3 of their numbers, and we also did Humble Pie's Natural Born Boogie.
Do you learn from some of these other players?
Oh my God, yeah, of course. I mean, you never stop learning. Today, I'll listen, I'll hear something, and then I'll go and Shazam it, find out what it is.
Yeah.
Put it in my iPhone and then slow it down, so I'll learn it.
Let's just do a timeline here. You have been doing what you've been doing for, I'm going to guess, over 45 years?
Well, professionally, yes, I guess 1966 is when I left school and went professional. So
okay,
I'm not good at math, but everybody can do it now. 66 is when I started, so we can work it out.
Has Frampton ever thought about Frampton Does Humble Pie?
Well, it's funny, but right now we're in the process of finishing up this project on releasing the 4 nights at the Fillmore, not just the one night. So there's going to be not a reissue, but a remix of all 4 nights. Obviously, 3 have never been heard before. And Jerry Shirley, the drummer of Humble Pie, and myself, we're the surviving members, and we've just been through mixing this, and it was just a nice treasure trove to go back and hear things we hadn't heard for more years than I can care to remember, So, it's just great to hear Steve Marriott saying different things than aren't on the original album.
I can only imagine. Ken Calvert with Peter Frampton. Well, naturally, it'll be a Detroit audience, Peter, and I know that you're extremely fond of this city.
Yes. Well, we have we did the live in Detroit. We did the DVD there, so it's a big deal. We've always loved, ever since Humble Pie, I first came there with Humble Pie, it's Rock City,
And you've been reunited with your guitar, and I'll end with this, if you don't mind just telling us that story one more time. And if you can, in its quickest form, from beginning to end, you lost your beloved guitar. And
I was given it in 1970 by a dear friend, obviously for many years now, Mark Mariana. Then I used it for 10 years, from 1970 to 1980. The cargo plane crashed on takeoff in Venezuela, Caracas, and we were in Panama waiting for the gear, and we're told that the plane went down and all our equipment, as well as 5 or 6 people, unfortunately, lost their lives. So it was a very sad event, and that seemed to be much more important to me than. But then, we all lost all our instruments. So if you fast forward to 30 years ago, 30 years forward, a couple of years ago, I got an email to my website, and I opened it up, and there were probably a dozen, if not more, pictures forensically taken of the guitar as it is today, or was 2 years ago. And then it was like I don't know, take an acid. I've never taken acid, but I imagine that would be what it would be like.
I'm with you, by the way.
There is something that you have thought for 30 years was back to the earth, and we're told that went up we saw the pictures of the plane crash, but it survived and the tail broke off, so we never knew that, and then was stolen and then was sold, and so, I end up, it took me 2 years to coax the people to come to America to bring it back. They obviously weren't the ones that stole it in the first place, and I didn't care anyway at this point. Yeah. This is something I never thought I would see again, So they came up to Nashville, actually, and we filmed it all. And you can see from then on, you can see my reaction and meeting the people that brought it back to me on the DVD that we've just put out. It's just a little documentary. It's Frampton Comes Alive 35, and there's the extra is this meeting, and then the story of the guitar. So I get it back, and it's the one on the cover. It's the one I played on Rockin' the Fillmore. It's the one I played, on all sorts of sessions throughout my career. And so anyway, I got it back, and I played it for the first time at the Beacon in New York on the last tour in February, I believe it was, in 12. And the guitar got more applause than I did, I think, that night.
I doubt that, Peter.
No, but I mean, it's a famous, it doesn't leave, it's right beside me right now, and it never goes in a truck. It's always in someone's hand, and mine or my techs, and that's it, two of us. Yeah. And I'm so thrilled to have it back.
And it rides comfortably up front with you in an airplane, of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I don't blame you at all. Final question, the topic of my generation. It was the double album heard around the world. Are you tired of talking about it, or do you still wax poetic and go, my God, that's just a great memory?
Well, yes, it's something that, is very hard to see it the way other people do. But with time, now it's just part of a very. I just feel like it's been a very exciting career, and I'm just thankful for what I've been able to do, and that we're talking today about new stuff. That's amazing to me, and enjoying making music now. Probably more than ever still. It's a passion, and it never goes away, and it rejuvenates itself. So, I know people aren't buying music much anymore, but as I said the other day, it's like breathing to me. I have to write, I have to play. So you'll have to put up with me for a bit longer.
You can subscribe to the Ken Calvert Show podcast on Apple iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's also available by going directly to www.thekencalvertshow.com. You can reach Ken at kencalvertpodcast@gmail.com. The preceding program is the property of Ken Calvert and may not be broadcast without the written permission of Ken Calvert, unless you want your knees broken.